Good morning, everybody. Now, today is Sunday, the 12th of August, and it's the first day of the POC-a-Thon. So it started at midnight, but I like to sleep, to be honest. So I woke up about 7:30 this morning, and I've been reading the book that's not on my TBR list. It's the book that I started this week, and I wanted to finish it actually before I started the POC-a-Thon. However, I didn't. So I'm trying to finish it now this morning because it's raining outside, so I don't really have any plans for today except for reading and eating and playing Pokemon. So I am currently reading The War of Don Manuel's Nether Parts by Louis de Bernieres, and this book is actually suitable for POC-a-Thon. I was hoping to finish it before, but I didn't. I've got it's about 80 pages left, and it is set in Latin America, actually, in a fictional country, and there's characters like the native characters, there are black characters, there are Latino characters of various different mixed races, and there are like the occasional white characters who are kind of like the driving force of everything bad happening in the book. But I'm really enjoying this book, actually, really enjoying it, so I'm more than happy to be sitting down and reading through it quickly, because I just want to know what happens. And yeah, I'll update you later on in the day. It's not like anything's going to happen with this weather. Since I didn't end up really vlogging or anything, I just thought now, for the rest of this video, I'm going to go through the 3 books that I read and tell you what I thought about them. Now, the first book I finished was Freshwater by Akwaeke and Emezi. Now, I finished this book quite early on within the readathon, and I did enjoy it. It was particularly enhanced by the fact that I was able to talk with Diana and Justin from Ghost Reader about the book as we were going through, and we were able to share our thoughts and everything, and it was really interesting getting their perspectives on it. But for me, it was just a 3-star read. It very much felt like I was reading The Vegetarian by Han Kang, in that it dealt with mental health in a way that was kind of very different and interesting, yet started off a lot stronger than it ended up finishing. So with The Vegetarian from Han Kang, I enjoyed the first 2 parts a lot, and then the 3rd part just really didn't do anything for me. And it was the same with Freshwater, in that the end kind of part of the book just almost drifted in a way that didn't need to have happened, and it could have finished a lot earlier on and I would have still enjoyed it. As a debut novel, it was really strong, and I think Emezi is going to have like a great career ahead of her. But for me personally, it just wasn't a book that I enjoyed that much. I thought it was unique, and I appreciated the style in which it was writing, and the topics in which it was dealing with. I felt quite uncomfortable sometimes because it felt just very autobiographical in a way that perhaps was a little bit too much. And it kind of made me feel a little sticky when reading it, almost like, oh, I don't want to know that much about you. And then as the kind of story progressed and the subjects that were being dealt with were discussed, I kind of felt that some of those subjects didn't need to be discussed and would have been a little stronger if it had just focused on one element rather than branching out into the elements that it also kind of touched upon. Ultimately, for me, it was a little bit too spiritualistic in a way that I couldn't get on board with, and that was a little bit of a downer, but But I still enjoyed the process of reading the book, and it was a good book, and I know it's going to be a book that a lot of people will enjoy, just not my cup of tea. And then I read My Tender Matador by Pedro Lemebel, and I must say, I think this is one of my new favourite books of the year. This was a 5-star read, absolutely, and I am so glad that I finished it and actually gave it the time that it required. It was all written in straight prose, very few, I don't think there were actually any chapter breaks. There were breaks in the text where kind of it seemed like natural stops, but otherwise it was like page to page text. And at first, that kind of threw me off a little bit, as did the language that was being used. It was very homophobic, despite the fact it is a story being told from the perspective of a drag queen. And then you kind of realise the sort of liberating use of language that the author kind of utilised, specifically to kind of show the way that these drag queens were living within the society and quite widely accepted within the society. And it was very interesting to see the way that gender was used in this text. It was just sometimes the main character was referred to as a she, particularly from her own perspective, but then from every other character, they were using the word he to describe this person. And then you kind of feel this sense of being trapped within this kind of world where you can be anything and anyone you want to be, except for when the government, which is under the Pinochet sort of rule, the military government, tells you otherwise. But there's lots of really kind of quirky little sort of fluidity between this government world and the world of the drag queens, which I found absolutely fascinating to read about. It was just such a great text. It reminded me very much of that film, The Great Beauty, by that Italian director whose name has gone right out of my head right now. But it's kind of where it examines being old within the creative industries, yet kind of also living the life of somebody younger and surrounded by people who are living this life of being young. And it was just such a great text. I don't really know how I can do it justice without giving everything away, but it was just a really heartfelt, very touching, quite witty story. I must say sometimes I did get confused because there were parts where it was told from the perspective of Pinochet's wife, and because there weren't really clear cuts, sometimes I was like, wait, this seems a weird thing for the drag queen to be saying, but then, of course, it wasn't. It was a different character, and then perhaps after the first third of the book, I picked up on that change, and you actually realise how well the author was able to differentiate between the voices without explicitly saying so, which was actually pretty good. And of course, once you got used to it, you really appreciated the work that went into it. And I just absolutely loved it. And finally, I read The Last Children of Tokyo by Yoko Tawada. Now, I didn't exactly finish this book in the time allotted for the POC-a-Thon, but I did finish it soon after. And I gave this one 4 stars. Now, Shazza and I were talking about this whilst we were reading it, and for both of us, I think it definitely wasn't what we expected, but in a really good way. The book itself was just so intriguing, and I was absolutely absorbed by it, trying to figure out what was going on, what this world was. And in some respects, I completely and deeply understood it through the way that the story was told, and I understood the kind of dystopic world that these characters were inhabiting. Towards the end, it kind of made me a bit more confused, and I felt like I didn't know the world at all, and that was a very interesting experience, actually, and I did enjoy that. I think the very ending kind of knocked it down from 5 stars to 4 stars, just because it wasn't it didn't go in a way that I kind of felt content with as a way a book would end. But overall, the text itself was just so absolutely stunning. The way that language is talked about and then also used in this text kind of really, I think, shows how well the translator also did, just because language was a very specific thing, particularly foreign language, because in this world, Japan has gone back to the time when they are kind of closed to the outside world. So that in itself was really intriguing and kind of made every single word on the page count for something and mean something to not only the world but the characters themselves. And I just think the relationship between the great-grandfather and the great-grandchild was just so beautiful. I honestly could imagine this being translated into some sort of animated film that would just be gorgeous in every respect, because it was such a gorgeous tale, even though there were so many sort of dark, undulating things going under the surface, which you were never 100% sure of what they were or what was going on. And that was really quite exciting.